There's no place like home. There's toothpaste on my gnome. There's mace on my comb. What?
Oh, Mr. Code, you're finally awake.
Oh, Judge, I had the craziest dream. You were there, and G5 was there, and that wall with the crack was there. Wait, that wasn't always there. Although I do remember being thrown at a wall at great velocity, and then nothing.
Oh, that was me. My bad.
But that horrible nightmare, G5, in that nightmare, apparently you suck.
Oh, I do. I'm just brave enough to admit it.
Oh, right. I forgot. Yeah, that's depressing. So, lunch?
Dinner.
Whatever. Pull the dinner lever, Judge. Wrong lever!
Ooh, yeesh. Let's go check for bones.
Objection! Hello, every pony. We're not in Kansas anymore, as today we take a look at the next MLP IDW classical literature adaptation of The Wizard of Oz with the Unicorn of Odd. Now, interestingly enough, the comics are actually an adaptation of the original novel rather than the movie, as the book is in public domain, and thus don't want to get in trouble with major studios.
Shh, you wanna get sued?
Thus, we get to see some elements that weren't included in the original movie, including some of its rather dark elements, which, while censored, are still kind of disturbing when you think about it. But we'll get back to that in a bit. The first thing I'd like to discuss is the artwork. The pencil work is done by Jenna Ayub, and coloring by MLB comic veteran Heather Breckel, who both did the art for the previous Classics Reimagined Little Phillies. And unfortunately, the main issue with those comics are still present. If you'll recall, the actual background scenery and objects looked decent enough, but the ponies themselves looked, well, odd. They had strange body-size proportions, and with their tiny or off-size head in some shots, at times it would make them look like bowling pins. Plus, they also don't have a chin, which made their mouths and muzzle look weird. I won't say it's unappealing, but it's definitely a style that's off-putting at first. Similar problem arises with this series, though I will say for the most part the ponies' designs did improve a little bit, and the obvious design flaws aren't as apparent this time around, at least from the side views. Though the ponies' designs from the front view still suffer. Their muzzles are so short that they are practically non-existent, to the point where it looks like their faces were just squished. Otherwise, the characters' various outfits have a fair amount of detail, especially in AJ's mane and tail, with all the intertwining line work. It's rather beautiful. And in a clever bit of artistic styling, much like the movie, the intro scenes at the farm have relatively muted colors, but when we arrive to the Land of Odd, comparatively, everything looks much more vibrant, which especially works for a story that involves strange and fantastical imagery and locations. But let's talk about the story actual now. Again, similar to Little Phillies, this story bridges the original book to all of its key scenes, traveling to the Land of Odd, meeting with each of the main supporting characters, meeting the great and powerful wizard, defeating the Wicked Witch, and ultimately ending with Dorothy Jack finding her way back home. And overall, as a parody, while still doing its own thing, it was a fun read. Part of that being attributed to the already well-written characters of the novel, and with the comic putting a twist in their original personalities, it bizarrely works. The original Dorothy was a sweet, innocent, bold, but naive girl that through her adventure developed to become much more wiser by the end of her journey. Here, Dorothy is a combination of the original and AJ being portrayed as a no-nonsense bold lady who, while not as naive, is willing to do anything to get back home, which leads to consequences for her and others with how hyper-focused she is, but still leaves room for her to be vulnerable at times, acknowledging her plight of being away from home, yet it doesn't deter her spirit, making her a well-rounded, relatable character. Now, of course, this is a parody of the original, which allows for several moments of poking fun at various concepts from the original book. Like instead of trying to gently get the scarecrow down from the pole, Dorothy Jack immediately resolves to bucking and breaking it to shortcut the scenario. Or being the tomboy she is, she demands to be in overalls rather than a dress at the expense of the narrator, which does lead to another issue from Little Phillies. While the fourth wall breaking isn't as intrusive as the previous series, it does grind the plot to a halt with the characters arguing with the narrator. The worst offender being in issue number 2 with the introduction of the Tin Mare, and Rarity being Rarity is offended with the narrator not introducing her with the panache she wants. Thus, she decides to give her own intro narration, which takes up 2 pages. And while Dorothy Jack's cut in here is funny, it just isn't worth it. And these arguments with the narrator happen every single issue, and it kind of kills the pacing. That being said, when the comic is doing its own thing or mocking elements of the original story, it's pretty funny. Of course, being a children's comic, it's always interesting to see how the writers skirt around the subject of death. One of the most obvious being the Wicked Witch, the Princess of the East, smushed by Dorothy Jack's house. It turns out that Luna was just pretending to be Nightmare Moon, or the evil princess, hiding underneath the house, and the good Princess Celestia just raises the house off her, and they fly away like nothing happened, essentially bickering like Luna lost a bet. But my favorite aspect is just how disturbing they made Rarity as the Tin Mare. Now, the Tin Man's original backstory was dark enough, with his cursed axe chopping off his limbs, essentially becoming a cyborg.
I'm a cybernetic organism, living tissue over a metal endoskeleton.
And though it's not illustrated for obvious reasons, the writers actually kept the idea of the Tin Mare's body being chopped up limb from limb over time due to a cursed axe, again becoming a freaky cyborg Tin Mare thing. That's subtly dark on its own, but the best part is they made her kinda crazy, even kind of a psychopath at times, with how gleefully she wields her weapon.
Die, die, die.
The funniest bit in this whole comic is where the Woodsmare spots the Queen of Field Mice being chased by opalescents, and the next immediate frame is the axe cutting off the feline, almost killing her.
Perfect aim!
What are you talking about? I missed.
That is hilarious. But of course, being a character that wants a heart, and therefore wants to feel compassion, clearly means she meant to miss, right? Right? I kid, but the core supporting cast, while going through its own bizarre adaptation, still adheres to the core values of the book, with each of the three displaying their strengths and weaknesses along the journey, which again leads to them realizing their actual missing elements by the end. And admittedly, while these specific lessons don't leave as major an impression on Dorothy Jack as in the original novel, due to the beginning real-world stuff that set up her shortcomings as cut for the comic's time, there is still an arc with her learning to work with eccentric friends, learning to be more compassionate, and make better decisions in her life. As for the major locations, while the artists don't take full advantage of such a bizarre land, it still looks decent, giving us a basic idea of every place. The Munchkin Village looks okay with its tiny houses and fungi growing everywhere. The Emerald City exterior looks good, even though we really don't get to see much of it. And the emerald glasses do give style to every pony, although AJ looks rather sus. Also, there was this kind of weird choice to make the Emerald City outskirts a Griffin Village, but the scene really doesn't add anything, nor are there any jokes, as the conversations just kind of reiterate information from the first issue about how no one knows what the wizard actually looks like. As far as the casting goes, I think they were spot on to the original characters. I've already discussed AJ and Rarity, but Pinky makes a surprisingly good Scarecrow. Having no brain, and yet being completely scatterbrained with her nonsense works great. Fluttershy, of course, makes an adorable Cowardly Lion with a great set of flanks. A great personality, and I really like her mane. Surrey Polomare has a nice cameo as the foil to the Woodsmere, having the evil witch curse her axe. Rainbow Dash and the Wonderbolts are the flying monkeys. The Breezies were a clever replacement for the Munchkins. Our Wicked Princess of the West is played by Chrysalis, whose appearance is short but fun, and is hilariously killed off by an accidental buck.
I'm melting! Melting! Oh, what a world! What a world!
And like I said, she doesn't appear much in the story, but she honestly wasn't a main focus of the original tale either, rather just a cause of Dorothy's obstacles to strengthen her resolve, which works out here as well. And of course, the great and powerful Wizard of Odd is portrayed by Sunny Starscout.
Who you calling Pinhead?
Okay, the wizard is actually portrayed by Cacnea.
Cacnea.
All right, I'm done. He's actually portrayed by
John Cena!
Oh yes, it's Trixie, obviously.
I can explain.
Now, much like the original, the characters all approach the wizard with hopes to get their respective desires fulfilled. But as it's revealed in the end, they had those supposed missing elements all along, displaying their traits in various scenarios, and merely got their affirmation from the wizard at the end. Here, I love that Trixie just hilariously shotguns through everyone's desires, not really giving a shit about giving them what they want because it's already a foregone conclusion from their journey. Like with her literally giving the lion orange juice that just says liquid courage on it. That's a great way to get through a ton of exposition fast while playing with the reader's expectations in a creative and funny way. Plus, Trixie insulting herself with her issues of inadequacy through the use of a Twilight puppet is the capper to her character. And speaking of Twilight, she makes a great and wise Princess of the South and gives us some more Twi-Jack shipping. Oh yeah. And that about wraps it up. Sure, there are some elements here and there I didn't cover, but I really hit all the major points. Overall, I highly recommend this story. If you can get over the hurdle of the ponies' designs, then you'll find a funny yet still meaningful parody of The Wizard of Oz. It hits all the key points of the original tale while inserting some new clever elements that make the story its own thing. Read it today, and don't forget to subscribe. Well, that's it for today, guys. Until next time, MC out!